Hello everyone, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040 and welcome to another edition of the X-Men 97 review series. And today we are going to be talking about episode 9, Tolerance is Extinction, part 2. And we are joined once again with the one and only, the badass himself, Rex the Boss 11. Rex, it's great to be back here once again. Let's rock and roll, let's do this.
Hey guys, how's it going? Let's talk about X-Men 97, episode 9.
So, episode 9, Tolerance is Extinction, part 2. This episode picks up where we left off from the end of part 1, where we see after the X-Men have pretty much defeated the human Sentinels, we see the return of Xavier. Now, with part 2, Xavier is not welcomed back with open arms, and I thought this was a really interesting dynamic because Xavier, he's pretty much like the father figure. Everyone looks up to him, everyone respects him. This was a situation where, like we said in the previous review that we did, why are you back here? We don't need you. We're doing just fine without you. Rex, go for it. What did you think of part 2 with the return of Xavier?
I mean, once again, the Cyclops dad issues, it's obviously spreads among the X-Men because not all of them are pleased to see what's going on and his return. Like, where have you been?
Yeah.
You know, the Captain Marvel stuff, like, well, where have you been? Why have you not been helping us?
Yeah, we've needed you.
We're superheroes, but like, yo, come on. You know what I mean? Either way, it's obvious that they can do it without Charles. And this is the negative side to, you know, it looks potentially like a lot of these are thinking, well, you know what, we're all fighting our demons, like Rogue's fighting her demons, etc., etc. And at the same time, you know, all these characters are fighting their demons, but Charles has been on a different planet living a happy life with his alien girlfriend.
I know. Yeah, I know. I mean, for me, you know, Xavier coming back, it to me is like, yeah, sorry I've not been around. What do you mean, sorry you're not been around? We needed you. Where the hell have you been? Oh, not much. Just been on another planet, banging some alien chick. You know how it is. Yeah, but we needed you. That's kind of how it felt to me. But the thing with Xavier's attitude, it was almost like he didn't really apologize, did he? So I'm sorry I wasn't there for you guys. He's like, yeah, I'm off doing my own thing. So what?
Yeah, it's a bit, to be fair, he come across as a bit of a, like I said, with the daddy issues, he comes across as a bit of a pissed off dad, sort of like, you know what, I've helped you lot long enough, but he's just not saying those words.
Yeah, it's almost like with his attitude, it's like, well, you know,
Have I not done enough for you by now?
Yeah, that's it. That's what I was looking for. It's like, well, you know, I've been here since the start. I've looked after you guys. You guys haven't done too bad without me. Am I not allowed to have a life? You know, it's almost like the single dad pet thing. You know, like your dad's been on his own for so long, looking after everyone, holding the fort. So it's like, well, look, am I not allowed to have a life too? I met this hot chick. Can't I have a bit of fun? No, you cannot.
And not to mention that some of them didn't really like her in the first place, though, did they?
No, I remember that back in the old shows. Like some of them were a bit like, I'm not really keen on her. She just comes across as a bit too intense with her beliefs and stuff. That's how I remember Lalandra from the old show.
Not to mention it was a bit of like a takeover thing as well, wasn't it? To do with the Phoenix Saga, sort they wanted to possess the Phoenix stones or something to do with their brother or something like that.
Yeah, it was the whole thing with her brother trying to take over her empire, sort of thing. Because I remember in the Phoenix Saga, Lalandra was a big part of that. So, you know, obviously some X-Men would be like, I don't know about this lady. Can we trust her? And Xavier's like, we can trust her.
One thing that annoys me about her though is like, and something that actually grinds my gears about the show itself is, do we never get an explanation as into how long, like, sort of time has passed in space as it is to on Earth? Is it at the same time? Or has Charles been up there for like 20 minutes, an hour, and he got married and then he's been told to come back? Or how long has he been up there for?
I think as we said at the beginning, is the show takes place a year after Lalandra took Xavier away. So yes, I would say he's been up there for at least a year. Now to Xavier, he probably feels like, well, I haven't been gone long. I've only been gone like a couple of days. But on Earth terms, he's been gone at least over a year.
Not to mention, it seems like they've got enough problems up in space without him having to come back to Earth and save people who don't even want to be saved by the sounds of things.
Exactly, and the thing with Xavier being away, yeah, in his mind, I haven't been gone that long, but on Earth, like, well, yeah, you have. You've been gone a long time. A lot has changed, and I think that's kind of what I wouldn't say pisses off the X-Men, maybe Cyclops, but I think with the rest of the team, it's like, well, you've been gone a year. What are we supposed to do? Wait for you to come back? What would you
It's
say?
true.
Do you think the X-Men were quite within their right to be angry with Xavier?
From a perspective of what are we having to deal with here, yes, but from a perspective of, well, you've not exactly done nothing without Xavier. You're struggling to even stay together as a team. We're back to the old school sort of, no one really knows who's in charge. 1 minute it was Cyclops, the next thing it's Magneto. So who's in charge? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. I think Cyclops kind of got his nose put out of joint a bit. It's like, look, I'm in charge here. But why is this guy coming along? And now Xavier's back. Like, well, where do I fit into all of this? I think that's where Cyclops gets really annoyed. It's like, well, am I not in charge here? Last I checked. I mean, what the hell's going on? So I would say probably the X-Men have kind of got a right to be annoyed, but as you said, at the same time, they haven't exactly done a good job of staying together, have they?
Not to mention that this is still based on the Wolverine from the original series and not the Wolverine that has become like the main vocal point of the X-Men universe. Do you know what I mean?
In more recent years, that has been the case,
Yeah.
but for anyone who's followed the original X-Men comics going back to the Uncanny era, Cyclops has always been the field leader, not Wolverine. He's
Yeah, but
always
it
been.
comes down to popularity for me. It comes down to who's the most
Yeah,
popular one out of these two.
of course. No, of course.
Who's like when it comes down to whose side is he on, it
Mm.
comes down to also like who's the most popular one out of the two of these. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. No, of course. I totally agree with you. But in the old comics, it was always Cyclops. Cyclops was pretty much like the Captain America of his team,
Yeah, it's
really.
because he's the most trustworthy and he's the one that's not corrupted by anger and all that. I get it. I get it. But there's times when Cyclops is detrimental to the whole team and himself. And he's
Yeah.
caught up with Wolverine doesn't really have the dad issues, does he?
No. He's been around pre the X-Men. He's much older than all of them, isn't he?
Yeah, he joined the team because as a trade-off with Xavier, didn't he? Like, sort of, you unlock my memories of what
Mm.
happened to me when I was younger, that the bits that have been wiped from me, and then I will help, I'll help be your mercenary basically to take on whatever is coming our way.
Yeah. Yeah, and you see, you know, Xavier like pretty much extends his hand like, well, I'm back, and the Cyclops like, no, I'm not going to shake your hand. Screw you. Some good dialogue here, I must say. That's one thing X-Men, especially from what I always remembered with the cartoons, they were always good with scenes like this. Real family dialogue driven. I always enjoyed that aspect. And Sunspot has now got a X-Men uniform. I'm really
Yeah,
pleased
it's
about that.
officially part of the team now. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
officially joined the team, he's saving Jubilee on multiple occasions. Seems like they may have reused some animations for some of that, but yeah, he seems to be very, very focused on just being there when Jubilee gets herself in trouble. So he's just sort of replaced Wolverine as being Jubilee's sort of knight in shining armor, which of course was retconned in the films
yeah,
to Wolverine doing that with Rogue, wasn't it?
yeah. I wasn't a fan of that. Sorry, that was just a bit weird
Like
for my
what this?
liking.
Wait, Rogue, this girl who was a fully grown fledged woman who never had any interest with Wolverine at all,
No,
apart from the fact that yes, because of the whole Magneto thing, she sort of learns. Now it would have made sense if they'd have done a fully grown thing with Rogue, where she was the fit, fully grown southern damsel sort of thing, or Southern Belle, and she did realize as an adult that she could touch Wolverine. Now, if they'd have put that sort of bit in there from the films, and they'd have both been adults, but to do it where she was a little girl, so basically she's got the Jubilee issue of like sort of always wanting for attention from other boys. It was a bit weird in the films, to be honest. That was.
Yeah, it was a little bit. I wasn't a great fan of that. It kind of goes back to what I said before, the whole Bruce Wayne and Barbara Gordon thing. Just weird. Not a fan. So what we have here is the X-Men have split into two teams. So we got a blue team led by Cyclops, who are going to confront Magneto, and we've also got Jean Grey's team with Storm, the gold team. They're going to Bastion's hideout, and around this time as well, Beast and Forge create the collar that can block Bastion's technopathy and obviously break his hold over the Sentinels. Now, this is quite an interesting thing that comes up here because essentially, I mean, it's been a while here since I looked at this, but doesn't Rogue here have some sort of like power of a god or sorts? Doesn't she? I don't know for
Well, she's
sure.
possessed, isn't she, a little bit, isn't she? Since all the Magneto stuff in the previous episodes and that, and where obviously Gambit dies,
Yeah,
Rogue, the name, you get to see finally after all of these years, it's not just, stubbornness and pissed offness. You're seeing why her name is Rogue.
yeah, and she's
Because
completely
she will go
changed her
rogue.
uniform as well.
She will go rogue. Her eyes look different. Her face looks different. There's obviously the element of maybe you're looking like too deep if you mention the Dark Phoenix, but it is a sort of entity issue with Rogue.
Yeah,
Uh, her mutant ability, he doesn't just cause her to be able to drain the powers from people. All of those powers that she's drained, all of those people that she's taken, she takes their memories and their feelings. So if they're angry people, and who's she fighting against a lot of the time?
yeah,
Well, the original cartoon hinted on it quite a bit, didn't it? Like where it was like when she drains the power of that Zoran, she gets to see obviously what she gets all the dark thoughts, so it can change her as well. So
yeah.
obviously,
That's
what
right.
you're seeing now is Rogue being in what I would call rogue mode, where she's not thinking from the hero perspective. She's thinking from the vengeful sort of. No one tells me what to do. I'm Rogue.
Yeah, and even you can see that Rogue's changed because she's not wearing her normal traditional costume, which is like that green and yellow. What's it like?
Yeah, she's gone
Latex
dark.
outfit. Yeah, she's gone
She's
proper
gone
dark.
dark.
Kind of reminds me a little bit of Jean Grey with the Dark Phoenix. When she completely changed her outfit when the power of the Phoenix took over. Yeah, it's good stuff here. And you see like Magneto, he's brought like this entire island with him as well.
Yeah, that's his go-to, isn't it? It's to surround himself with as much elemental, even if it's like he needs to imprison himself within the island so that nothing can sort of destroy it. Take like, obviously it will take sort of a nuclear explosion to destroy that island. That's his thinking is no, no one's gonna control me. No one's gonna, and you gotta imagine once again, it's the whole thing. The worst thing that could have happened to Magneto has happened to him. He
Yeah,
was hurt and then imprisoned once again. Now he would rather be killed than imprisoned because obviously we've seen it from the Holocaust days. It's just a no-no with Magneto. So at this point, it's like you got to imagine he's also thinking from that sort of vengeful. I don't care if it's mutants or if it's um like humans or aliens or whatever. Whoever stands in my way, I will take them out and I will remove them from my presence. Do you know what I mean?
that's it. And we see here Rogue actually pretty much chooses her side, which is the question we always ask, like whose side is anyone on? Well, Rogue is clearly on Magneto's side, as we can see here.
Yeah, she's definitely his. I mean, I'm curious once again to see where they go in the future with this. If they just dead it off, as in like it was a sort of time lapse and an anger issue, and pun intended, the magnetation between them two, it's so strong. The chemistry
Yeah,
and that when they are around each other, bad things can happen. I'd accept that to a certain degree. What I refuse to accept with them is that Rogue is just maybe going to go back to sort of, because of Charles now, all of a sudden, by the time that the next series comes along, Rogue immediately goes back to being the sort of helpful, I don't hurt people, I don't do any of that type of stuff. It would annoy me if they did that.
And even Sunsport went off with Magneto and Rogue as well.
They're clearly building like I'm not going to say a rift, but a future sort of different an agree to disagree situation that you can imagine in the future when they all come back around. And not to give no spoiler alert for the next episode, but when the final part of the episode comes to fruition, whatever happens in season 2 maybe might lead to season 3, where we get back to the modern time. And then fast forward a few months, Sunsport and there might be certified X-Men and leaders, and they might not, once again, like the Charles thing, they might not want Charles and Magneto's archaic ideas. They might have done too much work at that point there to sort of solve certain relations between humans and mutants and stuff, and they might not want them man coming back in and muddying the playing field. So you never know what the future is going to happen with all of the characters, but there's definitely something coming where it's like not all of these characters are on the same page and they're in the same team, but they're not all on the same wavelength, if you know what I mean. It's a bit like having, like a So Solid crew sort of thing, where half the crew goes and performs like all of the old garage songs, and then half of the crew goes and performs all of the old rap songs, but they never cross over.
No.
So you turn up to go and see the garage ones, and you turn up and you're like, what's all this slower rap music? I didn't come here to play this. It's confusing, isn't it? This is the whole thing with this now. When you even said about they split the two teams up, I thought, and I even sort of made a because I laughed, because I thought when I seen that at the time, I thought this is where the riff comes. It's the NWO Wolfpack, isn't it? They're not exactly supposed to be split because they hate each other, but you're gonna start to see that it's like, well, you're not in control of me right now. So to get Wolverine maybe away from Cyclops, or to get Jubilee away from Jean or whatever, they might start to have that thing where it's like, I prefer it when you're not in my team. You know what I mean?
Well, a really cool moment coming up here, and this is, I really geeked out to this one. We see all of the X-Men put on their classic costumes from
we get the classic run.
From like the 70s. I think it's like the 70s or like to early 80s. This for me, this was like the ultimate fan service. Seeing all of the X-Men in the iconic costumes from the 70s. Brilliant. I absolutely loved it. Seeing Cyclops in his classic 70s costume, Jean Grey in her Marvel Girl costume, just love it.
The Marvel Girl costume was a nice little touch, wasn't it? You know what I mean?
The green skirt and the yellow Catwoman like mask, brilliant. I never thought they'd actually do that.
Yeah, that's like I said in the original series. I don't think they really hinted upon anything before, did they? Like, I know we got the X Factor thing in the original series.
They did once. They showed a brief flashback when Iceman returned, and they showed a flashback of the Uncanny X-Men when they were wearing the yellow and blue spandex from '63. You did get to see that, but that's the only time they've ever hinted or showed that, well, we were X-Men long before Wolverine and Gambit and all those guys came along. There was a different X-Men, the first class era, as we would call it. But this was really good. I'm really pleased they went down that path. They actually, basically the X-Men going retro. I thought that was a really nice touch, because I didn't think they would ever do that.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. Like I said, at the end of the day, you always like a bit of nostalgia, don't you? When it's almost like once again, especially when in the same sort of episode. And it's another touch as well, where you've got to imagine there is no retro costume for Jubilee. There is no retro costume for those characters there. So you can start to see now, can't you, where it's like those characters are now going to go off on their adventures, and we've got this team of the X-Men. But then the question always is going to be well, what happens to the X-Men? And we've been speaking about it for the last few episodes about this leadership struggle and all this. Now you've got to ask yourself the question is throughout the whole of these last two, or this 3-part finale, is clearly there's an obvious who really now is the leader of the X-Men. And then at the end of the series, which we will get to in the next review, I'm sure, you have to then ask yourself the question once again is that, these are all X-Men, but once again, this is a LWO, NWO Wolfpack, NWO Black and White. Like we're now getting branches of branches of branches, different. They're in different dimensions. Spoiler alert. You know what I mean? So you got to imagine these are the buildings of this. Well, you're not seeing it too much, but these are the buildings of it where it's like the retro team. You get in to see, oh, they're the retro guys. They're the ones. Now we don't know once again if these younger characters may be thinking, I don't want them guys around. So
No.
we're gonna, you know what I mean? In the next series, we'll obviously get to see a three-way system of some people being here, some people being there, and some people being in the real reality of our time now, or in 1997, of course. And you know, we'll have to see how it all develops because it's clearly obvious that these costume changes and all these the little hints, Warhawk, where they're showing you this is the old guard, this is the veterans and the veteran team. These are Xavier's X-Men. And then there are X-Men that are there because of Charles and because of Charles's input, but they're not even how much input could have Charles had on Jubilee and Sunsport as regards to this series.
Yeah. So right now, at this point, we're pretty much seeing the X-Men battling the Sentinels, and we just saw Morph turn into the Hulk. So that was quite a good moment, actually.
The very first morph of the series that actually made sense, which goes to show because they must have realized after 4 or 5 episodes that people were going to start to get a little bit fascinated with, and it's probably because obviously they've started to actually put cameos in there rather than just having morph change into random characters. But yeah, they probably realized at some point that people were going to start to get a little bit more like, yeah, can we actually see Morph do something rather than him just changing into a random sort of, oh my God, there's that character.
Yeah, I like this. We're getting a Marvel Girl versus Sinister. This is something that I have been wanting to see for quite a while now, because I'm always used to seeing Cyclops going at it with Mr. Sinister, which is always fun, but it's really nice to actually see Jean Grey getting the opportunity to go at it with Mr. Sinister, and I thought this was a brilliant scene.
Well, to be fair, at this stage, she's got to hate him just as much as anybody else, hasn't she? Even though, honestly, like we know now that they've retconned a lot of it, but it definitely 100% in this series wasn't Jean Grey that was Cable's mum. So whatever Sinister must have been doing to Jean Grey must have been like you could. So in this series, she's bound to hate him more than anyone, if you know what I mean. Because not only did he take away her, kidnap her, cost her powers, cost her time, he took away the one thing that she might have always wanted, which was a baby with Scott.
Yeah, yeah, that was one thing she always craved for. So yeah, it's good to see that Jean Grey's getting her moment to shine against someone like Sinister, because I think she
As Marvel
deserves
Girl as well. As
as
Marvel
Marvel
Girl as
Girl
well.
even better. What would have made that moment even more? I mean, yeah, she's wearing the iconic green skirt with the Catwoman mask. It would have sealed the deal for me more if she wore her first ever costume from the first issue when she first ever joined the team, the yellow and blue. I probably would have just had a massive geek out.
Yeah, I think that maybe this might be a thing in the future where it's like, especially if you get somebody because of the way that they're using the time travel element, you may get some of this like mind games and trickery and stuff like, oh, remember this, Gene? So you may get a look in the future at all of the little bits and bobs, like every costume that like, even like Wolverine might get the bit where it's like he gets put into the brand costume that was just from the Pride of the X-Men, and maybe even
Yeah,
just a subtle joke like, oh, what the hell's that? You know what I mean? As in like, I'm not wearing that, and they just like put it on. In
just
this
put it.
universe, this is who you are.
Yeah, this is what you are. Put it on. So now we're seeing the rest of the X-Men are on Asteroid M, going at it with Magneto, and we're actually seeing Rogue and Wolverine going at it. That's something I never thought I'd see.
Yeah, that was a bit. Once again, whose side are they on, or whose side is he or she on?
So there's this the rift thing you was referring to earlier with the whole dividing the team up. So we're seeing Sunsport and Jubilee going at it. Nice. And this is the one we've been waiting for. Xavier versus Magneto. Ladies and gentlemen, This is the reason why we have the X-Men. It's because of these two.
Well, it comes down to a choice thing, doesn't it? Obviously, Magneto does his usual join me or die. You know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
it's like, what side do you want to be on? And obviously, Rogue and Sunsport. I even have to obviously bring this up, but let's not forget that that whole thing there is kind of like the Mystique and Pyro thing, isn't it? From whichever film it was from, First Class or whatever it was from, where the Hellfire Club are saying like, whose side do you want to be on? Not Mystique, it's an Angel, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think it's Pyro or whatever, whichever one it is, whichever films that they come from, them various moments. Yeah, this is a sort of look at that sort of thing when you get a character that might want to be a hero or might want to be a powerful guy, like Sunsport might want to express himself, but nothing says that he wants to be a hero. Just because these people, these mutants, obviously want to be, recognized and respected as people with their powers, doesn't necessarily mean that they want to save people, does it?
No.
Save the people that hate them and all that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. One of my favorite moments in this episode was Magneto telling Xavier to shut up. Oh, shut up, Charles. I thought that was quite a funny moment because it's not something you'd ever really see from Magneto telling Xavier to shut up.
Especially not in front of the X-Men either, but because of obviously what we've seen in this series where Magneto's probably gained some respect points from a lot of the X-Men who've seen it from his perspective rather than just Charles's. And there's also the element, Warhawk, that we don't actually discuss about Charles Xavier, which is maybe some of these X-Men, without Charles being around, have started to kind of realize, is there some kind of mind control going off with Charles? You know what I mean? Like, am I only free thinking now because Charles is not around?
That's a good point you make there. I don't think that's ever been mentioned because he is a telepath after all.
There's got to be a few X-Men or mutants in the past that have suspected that they weren't like. Look at the whole Wolverine thing, where the woman who he was with, the Native American woman that he's with, not Callisto, whatever her name was, Calypso, whatever her name was. Yeah,
yeah, I know who you mean.
Callisto.
Yeah.
Or whoever it was that he was with, the woman that he was with, it was all like a pretend thing, wasn't it, to brainwash him and all that.
Yeah.
That's what these telepathics have got the ability to do, is pretend, and their touch changes you and all that. How do we know that Charles Xavier has not been doing that with the X-Men? You know what I mean? They could go down a really dark route in the end and show you that for the whole time of the X-Men, it's just been Charles playing sick mind games, getting these, in a word, like you could look at them as like puppets and like freak show acts to just play out his fantasies. You know what I mean?
That does bring up a very good point there. I never ever
could
thought
really turn dark on Charles Xavier if they wanted to.
Because obviously with Charles not around, it was more like the X-Men could finally be themselves. So it's like, let's be a team without Charles Xavier. That's a good point you make there. I never really thought of that.
There was a lot of freedom of choice going on. Like, I don't like to be governed as a person, but these X-Men, they've chose to be superheroes, but it never seems to be good enough, does it? Always seems to be, especially like Wolverine, he has literally died and come back. So has Jean, to protect this team. And still, what? You have to bow down to a guy because he can read your brain and your thoughts.
Well, yeah.
Think about it. How many times has Charles Xavier saved them, and how many times he saves them once from their parents and the negativity and the prejudice? Yeah. So he's coming off like some kind of like prophet in a foreign land. You know what I mean? One guy who might save the foreign people, but then all he's doing is using those foreign people to act out, in the eyes of the normal, heinous crimes against human beings and other things, and destroying multiple buildings while he's in the process. And not to mention, it also leads to, there's no trust in the world. Like, no one knows if you're looking at a mutant, because it creates this underground thing, which is, because of Charles, it's so public that it has to be, a lot of people still grow up like Rogue did at first. Charles has to find them ones, doesn't he? That want to come out, or too scared to come out. He has to find them ones. But then what happens when he doesn't find them ones? You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a really good scene here where Wolverine knocks off Magneto's helmet, and we see Xavier really get into Magneto's head. This was a really good scene here.
Which is actually just mad because
It's just
the
crazy.
helmet was never really that supposed to be that, was it? Designed that.
No, it was never meant to be like that at all. Wow. It's quite intense here. This is where, I think this is the first time I can recall, we're actually getting to see how powerful Magneto really is in the show.
He is
We always knew
uber
he
powerful.
was,
He is
but
uber powerful, obviously. Like, obviously, in the early series, no. I'm going to be perfectly honest. In the early series, you only thought that Jean was powerful because of the Phoenix. You didn't actually realize that Jean Grey was certifiably a incredibly powerful mutant on her own. Yeah.
ridiculously powerful. Yeah.
In the original series, you didn't really get the element of Magneto being anywhere near as powerful as what he actually can be because there was no talk of elemental stuff. It was
No.
just he is the thingy of metal. But then, of course, as you get older, if you've got any sort of science or chemistry knowledge, you know that the floor and the earth, everything is just too much metal, isn't there, in the world for
Yeah.
someone of his powerful. So eventually you get to see it, don't you, where Apocalypse teaches him,
That's right.
this is how powerful you are. You don't just have the ability to grab that fence post and take the metal off there and, sling it at somebody. You can actually draw the metal from the actual earth and craft it into whatever you would like it to be, which is where he can just make, he can take the iron out of your body
Yeah.
and turn it into a weapon. That's how dangerous and powerful. This is where obviously any government would then start to say, yeah, surely we have to be careful about who we're letting be these powerful people because, this guy has the ability to kill the entire world.
Yeah, that's true, And there's another sick moment coming up here where Wolverine stabs Magneto with his claws. Now, this was a moment, this was recreated from a comic book back in the day where Wolverine stabbed Magneto, and then Magneto, in retaliation, he rips out his adamantium skeleton right out of his flesh. And I thought, wow, they actually went there. And this is probably the most graphic scene of the entire show, if ever, just
Weirdly knowing as well that anybody with any sort of X-Men knowledge, no matter how graphical that is, anyone with any X-Men knowledge knows immediately, you know what, I'll be fair, his skin's just going to grow back, isn't it? So yeah,
yeah,
because he's just a regen. He's just a regen of a regen of a regen of a regen. You literally cannot kill him.
yeah.
So it's like I'd imagine that you could, in theory, you could cut his head off and then put his head back to his body, and his body would just regen back together.
That ends, part two. Really, that ends on a quite a big cliffhanger there.
Yeah,
Wolverine getting his adamantium
it's the
skeleton
three-way
ripped out of his
dance. It's the
flesh.
three-way dance that I predicted from earlier on in the series. I
Yeah,
said there was going to be where eventually they're going to annoy Magneto. He's going to probably then be on his own side fighting against the other two sides that are then subsequently fighting against each other. But it's either going to have to turn into the enemy. My enemy is my friend, but it doesn't seem like that because it seems like there's a lot of brain confusion here once again without the Charles Xavier sort of hive mentality of thinking that I think that he's been forcing upon these poor X-Men. Like, I think that there is the too much freedom of speech. So they've all got the same sort of goal of we want to be in charge, but then you never know. And briefly, we didn't mention as well the forged necklace thing. It's a bit of a strange thing, isn't it? Because it's almost the same thing that then leads to like other things. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's like people are going to be against that anyway because it's like, yeah, we can use this for this and we can reverse engineer it, but it's also the same thing that created the thing that could take us down.
That's it, really. But this was a much better part than part one. I thought part two was a lot better. I mean, what did you thought of part two overall?
Yeah, much better, much more absorbable episode for its action and for its thing. And obviously, because you kind of got a glimpse into what part one was, this is where it's like the crossover filler, where it's like if this was a longer, if these were an hour episode, this might have been a decent. The last episode might have been a decent episode. But then, of course, like I say, because it's a shorter one, if it was a shorter one, then this would be the first 20 minutes of this episode was very, very strong. And then if you cut that in half, the second 20 minutes of this episode was decent as well, enough to watch, because you know that you're getting these, not even cliffhangers, but these tasters and these little berries that are going to lead you into the next episode, which then of course we're going to get to see the finale. So it's like, yeah, right, let's get this over and done with. I want to see what they can really deliver us in this finale, which you know you're going to get, as I would predict even before we're going into it, even though of course it's a hindsight thing, but I would have predicted before going into the final episode, going to get a few cameos. You might even get some involvement from some of the characters that are not exactly X-Men, which a lot of these things you are sort of, episode 9, I remember I was sort of salivating, thinking, oh yeah, I cannot wait to watch episode 10. It could have, obviously I'm thinking you could have done with a bit more, but at the same time, because of episode 8, I'm thinking, yeah, let's just get this wrapped up before we have to deal with any more filler.
Yeah, no, definitely. Absolutely. So, what would you rate episode 9 out of 10?
Well, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel episode 9 out of 10, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. It's pretty simple. Like, you do get to see little elements of where, yeah, they are sort of, whose side is he on, whose side is she on. I think you can kind of already tell the ones that are going to stick by each other, even if they are fighting against each other right now. Like Wolverine and Magneto are never going to like each other. No. Whereas you kind of hope with Sunsport and Jubilee that they'll maybe, rekindle what they've got, because there is obviously something that's been going on between the two of them.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm definitely with you on this 9 out of 10 for sure. This was very strong, very enjoyable, much better than parts 1. Although parts 1 wasn't terrible, but I think with part 2, it definitely made up for what we didn't get in parts 1. So yeah, I definitely give this 9 out of 10.
One thing for sure about this series, and I can say this now, forget about Charles Xavier. The main character in this series is Magneto. The series doesn't actually work without him. The episodes where he either play the side part or he's not the main character, or you like episode 8 where you've got to wait right to the end for him to be sort of released. You can clearly see based on episode 9 and the finale, that this series only works with Magneto as what he does in these series.
Yeah, you can't have X-Men without Magneto. It just doesn't work. No, I totally agree. I think one thing before we wrap this up, I think one thing I've learned about Magneto in this whole series is that Magneto is probably, forget hero or villain, I think he's probably the most important character in the entire X-Men mythos.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would definitely agree with that.
You just
Him
can't.
and Wolverine are incredibly important to what they are, but they're also like the background characters to Charles and Jean and Cyclops. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. I definitely agree with that as well. So anyway, that's going to be it from us. We're going to wrap this up. What did you think of episode 9, Tolerance is Extinction, part 2? Did you enjoy it? What was your thoughts on the team being split up and having rifts? Did you enjoy that? What did you think of Jean Grey going at it with Sinister? Did you enjoy that as well? And also the ending with Wolverine stabbing Magneto before he ripped his adamantium skeleton. Do you think that was quite a graphic ending for the series? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and we will see all of you next time for the final edition of the X-Men 97 review series, where we are going to be talking about episode 10. Rex, pleasure as always. This has been absolutely incredible.
Yeah, nice one for having me here. And of course, guys, stay tuned for more.
So take care, everyone, and stay safe, and bye for now.